Unlock Season 14 with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of film, a dimension of scares, a dimension of discussion. You're moving into a land of both humor and substance, of facts and intros. You've just crossed over into the Horrific Podcast. You know, after doing a season that lasted over half of a calendar year,
yeah,
this one just flew by.
Did you know what's... yeah, no kidding, right? What's crazy to think about, if we use this in halves, technically, we had a season that went for a quarter of my son's life.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That's crazy.
Yeah. We gotta start changing things up more often.
It was a good season, though. That's no complaint. Plus, when we were introducing or when we were talking about season 14, I realized that I really miss saying season the 13th.
It was a special
season
time.
The 14th doesn't work for me, but the season the 13th just all worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like eventually we're going to have to start changing that up too, just to keep it interesting. So maybe the next season it'll be season XV.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah. You know, it's all about innovation. And we're going to innovate away from this format after this week. Because season 14 has been us going through episodes of the Twilight Zone that inspired horror movies in the future. And it's been fun, but this was always meant to be kind of a shorter season to regroup, give us some time to get ready to plan and research. And by research, I mean read a bunch of online articles and watch a bunch of videos for season XV. And so we're going to be getting into that soon. But we got one more episode of the Twilight Zone to go through in the meantime. And it's called The Trade-Ins. And it was from season 3, episode 31. And I did not write down the year on this one, but I'm going to guess 1962.
Ooh.
Ish.
That's close. I actually don't know.
Looking it up, yes, actually it is 1962.
God, you're fast.
Boom.
I was trying so fast.
Nailed it. But yeah, we mentioned last week that we had pulled a lot of our info for our previous episode, which was called I Am the Night, Color Me Black, from an article on a website called Horror Homeroom. And the article is called 5 Twilight Zone Episodes That Influence Modern Day Horror Film. And it was written by Don Keatley. And in the same article, there was a blurb about this episode, but this one is also on other lists as well. So if you do some looking into it, you will not have a hard time finding information about how this was very much an inspiration for the movie Get Out by Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele is an obvious fan of the Twilight Zone. He directed the sort of, I guess, Twilight Zone reboot that was on CBS Plus something, whatever they called their streaming thing that I did never get, so I haven't seen those episodes. But he's been involved with making film that is very clearly and admittedly inspired by episodes of the Twilight Zone, but then also has worked on, you know, the most recent incarnation of the Twilight Zone series itself. So thankfully, we don't have to worry about another situation where a director is trying to say that an idea he took from the Twilight Zone was his own.
Yeah. And just that alone makes Get Out way worth a watch in itself.
Yeah. Get Out's a great movie. I mean, I think it was one that it really came out of nowhere for me. Yeah. I did not... When I heard Jordan Peele was directing a movie, I expected like sketch comedy because that was the only context I had for him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But, and, you know, there weren't a ton... I guess there weren't... I mean, we don't get examples of like comedians, you know, breaking away into something that's not like drama or something like that. You know, like I think in one of the interviews that I was watching was just talking about being a lifelong fan of horror and knowing he wanted to get into it eventually. So it's just a cool example of a funny guy coming over to the dark side.
Well, and really getting a chance to do something sort of outside of,
and original.
maybe, where he might have been pretty like typecast.
Yep.
But it's like somehow he got the chance to do a thing that he was really excited about, and then the output of that was really cool. And so it's nice that all worked out the way that it did. But he's been involved with like the reboot of Candyman. He was involved with Lovecraft Country. He was involved with all 20 of the episodes of the Twilight Zone reboot. And then, of course, he did Snope and Get Out. And so I feel like he's kind of a student of the game. Like he is, I think I kind of prefer him doing horror stuff, which I wouldn't have thought, back in the day watching Key and Peele.
I never really watched Key and Peele very much. I think my experience with him is maybe from Mad TV. Like I just didn't.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so like for me, it was just like, oh, there's this horror movie guy that used to do comedy. No, I'm just kidding. But that's legit. Like I didn't watch a ton of their stuff. I mean, yeah. So it was welcoming, I guess, is what I'm getting at, or a little bit different for me, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'll do a quick episode recap, and then we can get into more specifically kind of the similarities between those movies.
Yeah.
But like I said, this one was called The Trade-Ins. It is about an elderly company who visits the New Life Corporation. Their salesman is telling them that they can buy new bodies and live for 100 more years. They've been married for 50 years, and the husband is very sick, and they want to go on living forever together. The problem with this plan is that it's $5,000 each, and they only have $5,000. After the husband goes to a poker game and tries to risk it all to double his money so that they can go together, he ends up where he started and has to go and only get the procedure for himself. At this point, the look on his wife's face when he sees her recognizing him as another man, basically, weighs on his conscience, and then he decides that he doesn't want the procedure and instead wants to grow old naturally with his wife. And that's about it.
Yeah.
I feel like this was a very straightforward story. Yeah. And it was kind of cute. Like this was like watch it with your wife on Valentine's Day. And the old man was really sad at the card game. Like this was a much more like emotional performance and episode than I typically would expect from the Twilight Zone.
No, that's actually extremely accurate. It was a little sad.
Yeah.
I guess technically at the end there was relatively happy ending, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Or clarity, but yeah. It was this is definitely like a prime example. I think you were saying last episode or the episode before, but like it's amazing to see where the ideas came from with some of these films. And this is pretty straightforward, don't get me wrong, but like just watching this episode and thinking like I can turn that into something as something else, or I can add on to this story and maybe make it a little bit different. Just an interesting take. Maybe he just watched the 4th of July marathon and he saw that episode and when he was writing, who knows, but I just like, I guess the other point of this, if you are making a horror film, like this is like 100% obvious as like the connection between like what you're referencing, I guess, or what you kind of, what was influenced by. Like this is, so if he came out and said no, then it would have been like, what? Like,
what is this, Poltergeist?
So yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But still at the same time, like I just appreciate where the idea started from and the fact that where they took it to, since he owned up that this is where he was influenced from. That's the only reason.
Yes. And a thing that I really like about it as well is that his movie that was based on it was not a remake, and it wasn't it covered a lot of its own ground. And what I mean by that is, like, if you think about the way that the movies were presented, or the way the two works of film were presented, with the trade-ins, you're dealing with two people where money is the issue, and there's this thing that they see that they really want, but it's unattainable to them. Like, they don't have the means by which they can both live forever, even though the technology to do it exists. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the source of, like, why the story is progressing. But if you look at Get Out, most of the people involved have all the money they could ever want. And so they're just, like, bidding on the best bodies to get into. And there really is no barrier to them continuing to live forever. And what's scary is the concept of, like, being the person whose body is going to be taken. And so that was a totally new element, because in the episode, the bodies were just, like, manufactured. It wasn't like you were taking someone's body and erasing them. You were just getting into, like, I guess, this artificial body. So the way that he chose to develop the horror was through, like, a totally different perspective, even though it was sort of the same general concept. And I thought that was a cool twist.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think oh man, do you think it would have been, like, felt like more of an actual Twilight Zone episode if they did take the body of someone that was living? Yeah,
absolutely.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, they wake up and they realize, they've just,
like, their
erased their best friends or something.
Exactly. Yeah, right? That's I guess that's the standard one. Yeah, this was definitely a little bit different, more mellower tone.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, I guess, in the Twilight, I mean, considering that this is the Twilight Zone, I guess the easiest way to know that you're in the Twilight Zone is just that gangster just being like, you know what, you win. You have 3 kings. I was bluffing. Here's your money. But it's also the Twilight Zone, so it's not 10K, it's the 5K. But I think that's the biggest thing, because what's he thinking? Just let the dude have it. It's crazy.
The dude, yeah. He knew when to hold him, knew when to fold him, knew when to walk away.
Yeah.
And he wasn't counting that money while he was sitting at the table.
he didn't even put it in stacks. He just started putting it in his pockets.
He was just, they were just tossing money around like handfuls of bird food. Like bird
food.
Yeah, they were not doing a lot of accounting.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I think that the climax was basically he read the reaction on his wife.
Right.
And he just knew, like, this doesn't feel right. And, like, had that moment of clarity after the driving thing for the whole episode was trying to get to that point. And that idea of getting what you think you want and then it not being what you thought it would be, I feel like is something that, is very compelling in film and has been used over and over and over. And I'm not even saying that this episode invented that, but it is definitely a thing that we've seen, kind of reverberate in filmmaking through the ages.
Yeah. I think the concept of this is kind of strange, because, like, there is in relationships, like, a physical attraction too, right? And so, or I'm sorry, not physical. Yeah, is that what it'd be? Like, you're attracted to their looks. Yeah. And so, technically, should the opposite partner get to pick out who they're going to be with for the next rest of their life? You know what I mean? That's
it. It would definitely be a logistical mismatch.
Yeah. And you would think that the other partner would be like, no, I want you to find me attractive. Where I'm getting at is my luck. My wife would pick, like, a dog or something, man. She loves puppies so much.
Wait, are you saying your wife would choose to be a puppy?
Yeah.
Or she would choose for you to be a puppy?
No, she would choose to be she would choose to be puppy. So I feel like I should get to choose for her, and then she gets to choose what. And I guess if I'm a dog, I'm cool with it, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
The idea of getting to have like a manufactured body, I think felt very, very, very science fiction in 1962.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with like CRISPR and some of the other technologies and some of the genetic manipulation type stuff that can happen now, it's getting like the idea that you could have like designer babies or you could have more control over that stuff is becoming more real. And I think that that's going to get interesting in the future as well, just as a premise for sci-fi and horror type stuff.
Actually, yeah, that's a really good point. I think that I don't think that they were touching on that, but it's interesting to see before, you know, we're really manufactured with looks nowadays.
Yeah,
for sure. And just seeing what it was like before, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. This episode is also, I feel like, a little difficult to talk about because it's just pretty straightforward. Like, just the description of the episode is pretty straightforward, and like, you know, they're going through and seeing like who they can pick and who they want to be, which I feel like just in itself is also just kind of creepy. But
yeah, I thought it was really creepy after they finished the transfer, and so they rolled the guy's body by and they just like showed the wife like, just so you don't think we
that's a good point,
got him mixed up, like here's his corpse. And then like the young version just kind of walks into the room in his mankini.
Yeah, that's a good point, because what if, like, another thought for the episode it's almost like, what was that the movie with the two boys and they go to their mom who just had surgery and her head was wrapped the whole time? It's like Mother
Goodnight Mommy.
Yeah, Goodnight Mommy could be similar to that, where they just kill the old dude, the young guy's getting paid, and she's like, hey, go act like you're
yeah
yeah, we totally had the technology to put him
wink. Yeah. And then one reason that I mentioned that article from Horror Homeroom was in the write-up on this episode there, they talked about how basically the concept of body swapping technologies was something that the Stepford Wives also puts front and center. I've never seen that movie. And I know that it's older than Get Out, but it may have had some... It would be interesting to go back and watch it and see if we had like an evolution of the idea. So like it starts with this, and then you go to the Stepford Wives, and then you go to Get Out, and it's kind of like this evolution of like seeing different sides of kind of this concept and how that works for like horror film. But that's also reaching because I don't even know what the Stepford Wives is about.
Yeah, I have no idea either. I've just heard the term.
Yeah. And there was another Twilight Zone episode called Number 12 Looks Just Like You.
Yeah.
And apparently that has been cited several times as the main influence for the Stepford Wives. So it may be, you know, kind of a combo of both of these episodes that went into that. So once again, in reading about stuff for this season, I now have a list of a bunch of horror movies that I want to go back and watch. So
that's actually a good point. Number 12 Looks Just Like You. I forgot about that. That's the one where she's trying to get surgery to look beautiful. She's already attractive by our standards. And she looks at the doctors and the faces all look like pigs' faces or something like that. Oh, no, never mind. I'm wrong.
I don't think that's the same. Yeah, sorry. I was trying to look it up. I know which one you're talking about.
Edit that out. Yeah, I don't think I really remember what number 12 looks like, but I also don't know Stepford Wives, so it makes sense. Is that something we should watch, Stepford Wives? No, I'm not asking for the podcast. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 2004 Stepford Wives?
That's what I'm.
It's a comedy sci-fi.
Yeah.
Who wrote that article?
Well, maybe that's why it doesn't show for horror movies necessarily. But anyway. Yeah. Anyway, I only know number 12 looks like you because of the metal band.
Oh.
They had an album, I think, called Put On Your Rosy Red Slippers. And I remember when I first heard it, I was just like, what in the hell just happened?
Damn. All in all, though, I feel like this season...
It's Put On Your Rosy Red Glasses, not Slippers. My bad. Yeah. Listen to it. Tell me what you think.
Rosy red glasses.
Yep.
Got it. I am pretty happy with this season, though. It's going to give us a little break. Be able to have a couple weeks off. We got enjoy the last of summer, with like maybe potentially typical summer weather.
I think that by enjoy, you mean stay inside with the windows drawn and the lights off and the air conditioning turned up, because that is the only proper response to what the weather has been recently.
Yeah. I mean, just a typical day for me, but yes.
Yeah. We stay inside and watch horror movies and TV show episodes all the time so that we can tell you which ones you should and shouldn't watch. And that's public service we provide.
For free.
Just like Real Good and Tubi.
At the cost of the taxpayers. I'm on unemployment.
You lucky son of a bitch. Yeah, no, this season has been fun. It's been interesting to go through. And like I said, I've got a long list of movies that I want to go back and watch now. We definitely focused on only doing a few episodes and only doing ones that we found particularly interesting as far as their horror influences. But we found lots and lots and lots of references where it's like, yes, this episode of the Twilight Zone basically set the template for this movie that got made later, and then digging into when did the director acknowledge it versus when did they not, and figuring out why or how some people were able to take that idea from a Twilight Zone episode and then just put their own super creative, interesting twist on top of it to make this really memorable movie, whereas in other cases they did not want to acknowledge it whatsoever, and then had all kinds of controversy and other stuff that came about because of that. So it's been a fun adventure, but I am excited for season XV coming up next, and we will be back in the near-ish future to tell you about it.
Oh yeah, they don't know when we're recording this.
No.
Oh, you guys are so stupid. I can't believe you don't know when this is being recorded. July 4th.
1999.
It was a good year, man.
I think this Y2K thing is bullshit.
Yeah, you can say that again.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. Tres, dos, uno.
If it sounds like I'm rushing, it's only because I got some beans and cornbread going right now. I still got time, but man, it's smelling good.
If it sounds like I'm rushing, it's because I'm broadcasting straight. You're right. Yeah.
It's not often I get to do
that. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
Dodged a bullet there.